Well, let's begin with our political panel in Washington. Yamiche Alcindor is a New York Times reporter covering national politics and social justice issues. And Sabrina Siddiqui is a political reporter for The Guardian. Ladies, welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Yamiche. We went through the broad outlines of his speech, but who do you think the president's target audience is on Tuesday night?
Well, it all really depends on what he decides to say. If he talks about the things that he talked about in his inauguration speech, this idea that he's beat out the establishment, and he continues to be in campaign mode, talking to people about really how well he's done and how he got to his position, then I think he's going to again be targeting his base and talking about basically telling them, you know, this is something that we did, this is a great thing, but not really giving any specifics on what he wants to do to the country. Now, if he ends up doing a more broader speech, it's going to be talking about the actual details of what his budget will be, and he's going to be talking about unification. He's going to be hopefully possibly talking about maybe working with the Democrats, maybe talking about what they have in common, thinking about things like the need to fix the country's infrastructure or the need to have some sort of fix to the healthcare system. The problem is that it's really up in the air what kind of speech he gives, and so far he has not been a president that's giving speeches that are unifying. Rather, he's been a president that's reminding people, hey, this is how I won, and let me tell you how great I am.
Well, Sabrina, let me ask you, administration officials have repeated this phrase about the speech, optimistic vision. And some critics, of course, as you know, said that the president's inaugural address had a negative tone, and that's the speech where the president described American carnage. Do you think that the White House is perhaps trying to reset the tone here?
Absolutely. I think that when you look at us being just over a month into the new administration, you can expect that Democrats might oppose a lot of Donald Trump's agenda. Certainly the proposals he's put out are in many ways non-starters with Democrats when it comes to tax reform, health care, certainly the travel ban that he's poised to reintroduce this week. But what he has been lacking is goodwill from Republicans in Congress, because members of his own party have been frustrated that this new administration has been unable to focus on policy, on the issues that they had hoped they would be able to get done with Republicans controlling both the House and the Senate. Instead, they've felt as though there have been too many distractions with Donald Trump continuing to war with the media and sparring with members of the press over the weekend and the past couple weeks, as well as, of course, the controversy into potential ties between his campaign and Russia. And they haven't really gotten to drill down and focus on the issue. So I think that's what Republicans in particular will be looking forward to hearing tomorrow night. And as mentioned, it remains to be seen if he also offers some olive branches to Democrats, and how much does he stick to that teleprompter.
Yeah. Yamiche, let me ask you on the budget. Paul Ryan's long-held stance on entitlement spending is about to go head-to-head with a core campaign pledge from President Trump. What is at stake here, you think?
Well, what's at stake here is really who's going to be the leader of the Republican Party, and how is this party going to move forward? I think that the idea that entitlement reforms are really at the heart of a lot of Republicans' platforms when they won. I was sitting in a meeting with the House Freedom Caucus, and they are some of the staunchest conservatives in the party, and they say, look, when Donald Trump was saying that he was going to be not cutting people's Medicare and not cutting people's Social Security, he meant that he wasn't going to be touching people who already are in the program. But he clearly meant that in their minds, he meant that he was going to be changing it in some way. Well, now we have a budget that says no, Donald Trump meant that he was not going to be touching these programs at all. And that's a really big difference. That's a big difference between Mick Mulvaney and a lot of Republicans were hoping that Mick Mulvaney was going to be able to have some influence on the budget and change some of these entitlement programs. And so far, it looks like Donald Trump is really going to stick to those promises, which is going to be a real problem for a lot of Republicans. And it might be really hard to get this budget passed by a House, because there's a big chunk, at least 36 Republicans, who are saying, look, I'm not going to vote for a budget unless there's entitlement reforms, like major entitlement reforms.
Yeah, it's certainly been a top issue for a lot of Republicans for many, many years. Sabrina, let me turn to you. You've been reporting on the tensions in Congress over investigating Russia. On Monday, we saw competing messages from the top Republican and Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Let's take a listen.
What I'm trying to be very careful of here is, and I want to warn all you, we can't have McCarthyism back in this place. We can't have the government, the U.S. government, or the Congress, legislative branch of government, chasing down American citizens, hauling them before the Congress as if they're some secret Russian agents. And that's what I'm concerned about here, that we don't go on some witch hunt against American citizens just because they appear in a press story somewhere.
First of all, we haven't obtained any of the evidence yet, so it's premature for us to be saying that we've reached any conclusion about the issue of collusion. I would say, on the basis of conversations that the chair and I are having with intelligence officials, we can't draw any conclusions, and nor should we. We shouldn't be prejudging where the facts lead.
So, Sabrina, are Republicans on the Hill shifting away, it sounds like, in their support for investigations into Russia?
Yes, I think that the context here is somewhat important because the White House reportedly asked Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee that you just saw there, as well as Senator Richard Burr, his counterpart in the Senate, who chairs the Intelligence Committee there, to help them refute some of the reporting that has been leaked with respect to the nature of ties between associates of Donald Trump and Russian operatives. And so Democrats who had already been calling for an independent investigation outside of Congress are now sounding alarms and saying, you see Devin Nunes already pushing back in ways that might be favorable toward the administration's narrative around this issue. So how can we trust them to conduct an investigation that would have the faith of the American public? Republicans, meanwhile, including House Speaker Paul Ryan, insist that the appropriate committees should investigate this matter further. But I do think it was notable that Devin Nunes, who of course would be one of the individuals tasked with leading such an investigation, said today that he's less concerned about the substance of this issue, which are potential communications between associates of Trump and Russia. He's more concerned with who is leaking these conversations and these reports to the press, which is very much in line with what we've heard from the president himself, who has openly called for the Justice Department to instead also probe the leaks and not actually the issue of Russian interference in the election, because he, of course, has said that that's fake news that's been concocted by the media, even though the U.S. government itself has said that they have reason to believe that Russia did, in fact, meddle with the presidential race last November.
All right. Sabrina Siddiqui and Yamiche Alcindor, thank you both so much, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you.